The Fourth U.S. Circuit Court of Appeals upheld a lower court's ruling on Thursday, blocking a revised version of President Trump's travel ban. The president's executive order, which he signed in March, targeted 6 Muslim-majority countries. The ban aimed to restrict people from those countries from traveling to the U.S. CBS News Justice reporter Paula Reid is in our Washington bureau. So, Paula, tell us what you heard during arguments in Richmond and what this ruling means going forward.
Well, Lane, this preserves the status quo. The travel ban remains on hold across the country and across the world. In the argument, though, it was clear that this was the likely outcome because these judges seemed very skeptical that you could separate the policy from the president's earlier statements.
Well, Paula, now that the Fourth U.S. Circuit Court has upheld the decision to block the president's travel ban, what can you tell us about why Mr. Trump is having trouble getting the ban enacted?
Well, it's right here in the opinion. The judges specifically said, look, the text, it vaguely refers to national security, but the context drips with religious intolerance. So what the judge is saying there in the holding of this case is that, yeah, you say this is about national security, but we can't ignore this context, which seems to really speak of discrimination. And of course, there's lots of other contexts here too. Support for the government. Arguably, many of these nations do have governments that are not reliable. You can certainly support the notion that you cannot get or guarantee accurate information about people you're trying to vet. And unfortunately, the judges said, look, the president has provided so much additional context, we can't separate that from the policy, and that's why they've chosen to continue to keep it on hold.
And Paula, what can the president and administration officials learn from this ruling as they continue to try to implement their national security policy?
Well, Lane, as they say, your words can and will be used against you. And that's what we're seeing here. So the president has to understand that anything he says could eventually be used to undermine a policy, because the dissenting judges in this opinion, they say, look, this is an important policy for national security and that blocking this harms national security. But without the president's statements, opponents of the travel ban wouldn't have had much to attack it with. So I think he'll just hopefully perhaps realize that anything he says later on down the road can be used to undermine policies that he's trying to enact.
Well, Attorney General Jeff Sessions, as you know, Paula, released a statement saying that the Justice Department will, quote, vigorously defend the power and duty of the executive branch to protect the people of this country from danger, and will seek review of this case in the United States Supreme Court. What's the probability, Paula, that the Supreme Court actually takes this case? And if it does, what are the chances that the president's ban gets approved?
Well, if it does get taken up by the Supreme Court, it is more likely to be upheld in the Supreme Court than it would have been certainly in the Ninth Circuit, where it's been bouncing around for several months now, and now in the Fourth Circuit. So the Supreme Court is definitely a stronger chance for the president. But Elaine, the bigger question is whether or not the Supreme Court will even agree to hear it. We're still waiting for another decision from the Ninth Circuit on Travel Ban 2.0. They're also considering that case right now. If you had a situation where the Fourth Circuit and the Ninth Circuit came to different decisions, the Supreme Court would be much more likely to step in. But that's not really expected to be the case. Also, Elaine, remember, this was supposed to be a temporary policy. This was a temporary policy to allow the administration time to review its vetting procedures. By the time this would even get to the Supreme Court, that clock would have run. But it's interesting, in court in Richmond a couple weeks ago, we learned that the administration hasn't really had any time to review its vetting procedures because they argued that they've been spending so much time litigating. So it's just really unclear whether or not this issue will still be ripe. It's a legal term for will it still be relevant for Supreme Court review. I don't know, Elaine. I don't think it's likely.
All right. Paula Reid in Washington. Paula, thanks for breaking that all down for us.